Hey, everybody, welcome back to another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show, where we are helping you to get better money, become a better couple, and live a better life. Guys, we are excited about today's episode because we're tackling something that a lot of you all are up against, and that is student loan debt. The world has been turned upside down in so many ways, and that has left a bunch of question marks around this area. It doesn't have a whole lot of conversations going on because of, some other tougher conversations are going on in the world. But hey, we got to talk about it. We have to figure out, are things the same when it comes to the student loans that I have? Are there some ways and some programs that have been created to help? And what about if I want to go back to school? What if I feel like this need that I want to go to school? If I'm going to school for the first time, how can I tackle all of the cost associated with that? And so to help us navigate this incredible conversation, we have a very special guest, no stranger to the show, an expert in all this stuff, none other than Robert Farrington from the College Investor. Hey, Robert, welcome back to the His and Her Money Show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me back. I'm excited to be here. Let's talk about this. It's crazy.
Let's do it, man, because even we've had a conversation, man, a couple months ago, like when this pandemic thing was first kicking off, and things aren't even the same from then to now.
Yep.
So what is some of the more pressing things? I mean, I know people are hitting your inbox and asking you a million questions. What are you hearing as a big concern for people right now in this area?
Yeah. So right now it's like twofold, right? We have people that have student loans and what is going to happen. Right now, federal student loans are paused. So when we last chatted, I want to say back in March, it was only like a 60-day thing. And then they extended it out and paused everything until September 30th. But September 30th is getting closer and closer every single day. And so people are getting concerned of, is it going to be extended? Am I going to have to start making progress on my loans? What's going to happen? Like, when are my payments going to be due? And some of these we don't even know the answer to yet, but that's pressing. And then the other side of it is, what if I'm going to college this fall? Like, it's all going to be online now. Some of these schools aren't even lowering tuition, and they're saying you got to pay full cost. And so a lot of people are asking, is it even worth it to go to college this fall? Should I even take out student loans to do it? And then, we have the looming changes of the presidency, potentially forgiveness, man. Like, politicians are talking about that all the time, and how that could change. And so all these things kind of are coming together. And I know there's a lot going on in the world, but, those are pressing issues for a lot of people as well.
So let's deal with the soon to be expiration of the program that was put in place that allowed you to hold off on student loan payments. For those who maybe don't know all the details of what that was, break that down for us. And are there any alternatives, or is it just the gauntlet's coming down and you better get ready?
And that's it. So the CARES Act, that was the big stimulus bill that Congress passed earlier this year to deal with this pandemic, paused all student loans, all federal student loans until September 30th. They paused the interest. They put it at 0%, which is crazy. And they paused payments for this 6-month period of time. And we don't know what's going to happen next. They keep talking about maybe extending it 6 months. They keep talking about this. But what you need to know right now, as of recording this, because I always got to put the asterisks when I talk to you, because like it could change in like 2 weeks. But as of right now, you need to think about what's going to happen in September. And for a lot of us, that means getting on a payment plan that we can afford, because those payments are going to turn back on. But your life might be very different today than it was just 6 months ago. And so you got to start thinking about what the future holds. The cool thing is that there is an awesome program called income-driven repayment plans. And these payment plans will set your payment based on your monthly income. And so if your income has changed right now, maybe you lost your job, maybe you're furloughed, something unexpected has happened, maybe half of your couple is staying home, taking care of the kids with everything going on there, you can reapply right now or anytime until September 30th with your current income, which it could be zero. It doesn't matter. You just got to fill in a box and say what you're making today, and your payment plan will adjust. And if you don't make a lot or it's gone down significantly, it could significantly lower your student loan payment or even make it zero. A legal payment can be $0 a month if you don't make a lot of money.
And how do they navigate that? Where do they go to do this evaluation to show that their income may have been lowered or eliminated altogether?
Yeah. So the easiest place to go is studentaid.gov. And if you scroll to the bottom, it says apply for an income driven repayment plan. You click that button, you fill in your information, and you'll go from there. It'll submit it to your loan servicer. It also submits it to the Department of Education. And usually within 30 to 60 days, you'll have a response on it, but you don't need to worry in that period of time. They're working on your application. So right now, though, it's a great time because if you think that first payment's going to come due at the end of September, right now in July, August is a good time to apply for this if your income has significantly changed, especially if it's gone down. Make sure that you're filling this out so that you get a new payment when payments kick back in October.
And then another thing that I think people may be considering, and well, let me ask this first, because I know as far as like in the real estate mortgage area, they're seeing some historically low interest rates. And people are considering and evaluating whether or not they need to refinance homes. Are people having those same considerations? And is the interest rate similar? Are you seeing lows when it comes to the potential of refinancing student loan debt? And how does one know if refinancing their student loans is a good or bad idea based on their situation?
Yeah, so student loan interest rates are at historic lows as well. Federal loans, if you're going to take out federal loans for college this year, it's the lowest they've been in history because they are at that historic low. But you should probably not refinance your student loans. I would say 95% of Americans should not touch their student loans, especially if you have federal loans. Because here's the thing, when you refinance, yeah, you get a lower interest rate. But if you have a federal loan and you refinance, it now becomes a private student loan. And that can be really costly in terms of the benefits you receive. So, for example, right now, payments and interest are paused on federal loans. But if you had refinanced, you wouldn't have enjoyed this benefit. And it doesn't apply to private loans, right? So, yeah, you might save, I don't know, 1 or 2% on your interest rate, but you lose things like income driven repayment. You lose things like student loan forgiveness. You lose things like the CARES Act benefits. And then potentially, if a president comes in and offers any kind of student loan forgiveness, it 99.999% won't apply to private loans. So you lose any potential future benefits as well. And you have to understand what that risk is. I think refinancing makes sense for about 5% of people that, they have great income. They're planning on paying off their loans in 3 to 5 years, and they don't take advantage of any of these benefits because they won't qualify for it, usually because their income or their job. So a good example is a doctor, right? High earner, probably have solid job stability. They're probably not going to qualify for much in terms of loan forgiveness because they're going to make too much. So in that case, if they can pay off their loans in 3 to 5 years, refinance, save 2%. But for 95% of Americans, refinancing doesn't make sense.
And you've mentioned loan forgiveness a couple of times, and I know there's that program out there. If you're working certain industries in certain fields, that I think after 10 years, if you make all your payments, it's forgiven. But I've also seen and read some things like most people don't get that. Like they get to the end of the finish line and they was like, no, you did this wrong or you did that wrong. So can you explain what that program is first for people, and then the likelihood that you get to the end and your loans are forgiven, and any tips or advice with this program that you can offer us?
Yeah, so the most popular program, there's a lot of student loan forgiveness programs, but the one you're mentioning, and I call it the best one because it kind of is the best one, is public service loan forgiveness. And why it's the best one is it's 10 years. You work in any job in public service, which that's so broad. I mean, you can work for the federal, state, local government. You could be a teacher. You could be an administrative assistant at a federal agency or a state government or a school district or a nonprofit. It doesn't matter what you do, it's just who employs you. So as long as your employer meets those criteria, you can get loan forgiveness. And then it requires you to do it for 10 years, right? So 120 payments, which I think is great, right? You give back to us, we give back to you. I think it really makes sense. But the program has 4 criteria. And this is why people are getting rejected. I say the odds are actually very good. The data supports this. The data says that we're going to see over 1 million people right now in the program. They're going to get loan forgiveness. But the problem is it's a 10-year program. So most of these people aren't getting it until 2022, 2024, because it takes time, right? But you have to do 4 things. And if you do these 4 things every single month for 120 months, 10 years, you will get your loans forgiven. I promise you. You have to have the right kind of loans. It's direct student loans. Any loan after 2007 is a direct student loan. So if you had a loan before 2007, though, you probably don't qualify. And that's one of the first things that people get derailed on, is that they tried to jump into this program right away when it became law, but they didn't have the right kind of loans to qualify because they had some old loans, because this was 20 years ago at this point in time. Number 2 is that you have to be on the right repayment plan. And any of those income-driven repayment plans count. You have to make 120 payments, right? So right loan, right repayment plan. Number 3 is you work for the right employer. State, local, anything in public service, state, local, federal government, nonprofits, school districts, things like that, qualify. And number 4, and this is the other one that derails a lot of people, you have to certify your employment. There is a simple form. It's 2 pages long, and it asks you for your name, when you were working at your employer, and it asks you for your employer's information. It's the same stuff you get on a W-2 when you file your taxes. It's literally the same box. If you have a W-2 from your employer, you just copy and paste that information over to the form, and you fill out that form to cover the period of all your payments. So I recommend you do it at least once a year. But if you move employers, you switch jobs halfway through the year, you might need to fill out a second form in the year, but you need to do that. If you do all 4 of those things for 120 payments, you get your loans forgiven. And so that's why it's a great deal.
So it's not about the degree that you have, it's about the agency that you work for.
100%. It's the job. It's who you work for. Like I said, it's so broad. You can be a police officer. You can work in your local government. You don't even have to be one of these mainstream jobs. You could be an accountant that works for the government. As long as your employer is state, federal, local government, or a nonprofit or a government agency or government entity, you will qualify for it. And this is the one thing I will say, though, is that when you're seeing these headlines that 99% of people are getting rejected, it all goes back. There's 3 reasons why they're getting rejected. They weren't on the right loan type, they weren't on the right repayment plan, or they weren't filling out that paper, the employment certification form, fully or accurately, right? So my argument is, yes, I like to rag on our loan servicers. It's fun to bash Sally Mae, right? Because they do cause problems for everybody. But on the flip side, if I was to give you $100,000 right now, and all I asked you to do was do these 4 things 120 times, could you do it for me? Make sure that you're filling it out the right way and accurately, because the things I'm seeing is people won't put on their employer ID number, right? So when you fill out your tax return and it says what's your employer's tax ID number? Well, they're not putting that on the form. They're well, I don't know it. And it's well, you're going to get rejected because they're looking for anything to reject you. So if you don't fill out that form completely, yeah, they're going to reject you, but you can spend 5 minutes, find that information, and guarantee that you'll get that loan forgiveness.
Now we have our power players in here. They are watching live. If you are interested in becoming a power player, all you have to do is go to hisandhermoney.com/PCU or powercouplesuniversity.com. It's really simple. You get a lot. You get to be involved in these episodes in real time, where the rest of the world that are not power players, you get it several weeks later. You also get access to us twice a month. We do personal Q&A sessions online. We also have a historic library of masterclasses and courses to help you on your journey to financial freedom. Again, go to powercouplesuniversity.com. So one of the power players is here, and they ask, so what is the best payoff plan for those who don't qualify for loan forgiveness? What's your advice for people who do not qualify and they would like to figure out a way to expedite their process out of this student loan debt?
Yeah, so it's so hard, and my answer will be kind of vague, but the best payment plan is going to be the one that works for you and your psychology and your mindset. I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to debt snowball, debt avalanche. You pick the plan that you're going to stick with, because that's the one that you're going to be most successful for. I will tell you that if you are not qualifying for any type of loan forgiveness, you should still look at different repayment plan options because you can always pay more. I'd rather play it safe, especially right now with like maybe an income driven repayment plan. And if your budget allows it, throw a little more towards it. Just because of all the uncertainty that we're facing. But if you're certain you have solid income, a solid job, debt snowball is debt avalanche, one of those two approaches. If you're not familiar, one is you pick the lowest loan balance first and you throw all your extra money towards it. And then when that loan's paid off, you go to the next one. And then you start throwing all your extra money towards that one, you pay it off. The debt avalanche is the lowest interest rate first, or the highest interest rate first. You pick all your money towards the highest interest rate first. And then when that's paid off, you go to the next highest and the next highest. They're both good approaches. One's a very analytical approach for like the analytical minded person. One's more of the psychology approach for the one that likes to get early wins. They're both fine with me. I would say pick the one that feels right for you and then start rolling through your student loans that way.
And are there, because you mentioned the best student loan forgiveness program, but there are also some people, maybe their loans were pre-2007 and they don't have that direct student loan that you talked about, or maybe, they don't work for a government agency or nonprofit. They work in a for-profit world. Are there other, maybe, B and C level student loan forgiveness programs that maybe people should know about, in your opinion?
Definitely. So a worst case scenario, like the default student loan forgiveness that a lot of people don't realize, is if you're on an income driven repayment plan, that plan actually includes loan forgiveness. It's really a long time. It's 20 or 25 years. But let's just say that your job prospects and your income never improve over 20, 25 years. Well, any remaining balance at the 20 or 25th year, and I say 20 or 25 because there's 4 different repayment plans with different terms based on your loan type. But at the end of it, it's just forgiven. So that's not the best because it takes so long. There's also potential for tax consequences for some people, but that's pretty rare. And then, there's a lot of other loan forgiveness programs that I don't think people realize are out there. So you go into the military, they have student loan forgiveness. You go into a bunch of different types of employment. Almost every state in the United States offers state-based loan forgiveness programs, but they all require some kind of commitment on your behalf. It usually is an employment or go work in a certain area of the state, usually low income or underserved communities. It could be certain fields that are needed. A lot of states have programs for nurses and things like that they might not have enough of in their state. So you should definitely look at your state depending on your career field too, and they might throw something like $5,000 a year or something to you if you go into these fields or go work in certain underserved areas in your communities.
So do you have any advice on seeking out, do you Google nurse loan forgiveness programs or whatever my degree is forgiveness programs? How do you know what your state is doing?
Yeah, so I have the guide if you want to link to it in the show notes for this, but I have this every single student loan program that exists, even by state. I have it all linked up on our website, and I'll throw it to you so you can link it up in the show notes and get it to your audience. But yeah, you can Google it as well. You can also look in your industry association. So if you are in a certain career field, a lot of times you have trade groups or industry associations that might be able to point you in the right direction. It all depends on what you do, but I'd say there's a lot of options out there. We were doing a study a couple of years ago, and over 50% of people qualify for something. Maybe not total loan forgiveness, maybe not paying off the whole thing, but I mean, shoot, I'd take $5,000 if I could get something, and I think everyone feel that same way.
See, that's why we bring Robert on, guys, because he knows all stuff and he's already written about it. So all we got to do is go to his website, The College Investor, to get all this information. But we will have a direct link to that guide in the show notes of this episode. Now, you mentioned earlier, and I came across it too. I saw something really quickly. I didn't dive deep into understanding what was going on, but it was something to the fact that this fall Harvard is going completely online, but the price of admission is exactly the same. And there's a little bit of uproar about that. And you said that they're not in the minority. I think a lot of schools are doing this. Is that accurate? Is that okay? Is that okay, Robert?
No, it's not okay. Yes, I would say most schools have not lowered tuition at all. And it's kind of sad to see. I can see both sides of it. Honestly, like as a student, you're not getting what you're paying for. So let's just be frank. It's not fair because, when you're paying your tuition, yeah, you're paying for that teacher to give you a lecture, but you're also paying for access to the library. You're paying for clubs. You're paying for community. You're paying for all these things. And you're not going to get any of that other stuff online. So you're not getting what you're paying for. The problem is the schools also can't charge you less because over the last 25 years, they've been racking up debt and hiring and spending all this money, and they have to pass those costs on to you. And if you don't pay it, you're going to start seeing some school bankruptcies. So I think this pandemic is going to cause a lot of changes in higher education. I think we're going to see a lot of schools go under. I think there's going to be some major changes, but you know what? You can't argue that they should do it. They're going to do what they're going to do. So all you can do is make a personal choice on what you do as a student or a family that's trying to make this college decision.
Does your credit score have you down and looking for solutions? You may just find the answers you're looking for with Credit Sesame. Credit Sesame is your solution for a free no-hassle credit score, credit analysis, and tips for managing your money. They are here to help you take control of and have the tools you need to bring about a bright financial future. Get empowered today. There's no credit card required. Receive identity theft protection up to $50,000 and discover a marketplace for credit and loan officers that will help you get to your next level. Visit hisandhermoney.com/credit sesame for more details.
And this pandemic, I think, probably has jarred a lot of people in the area of their occupational outlook. And so a lot of people may be thinking, you know what, I need to go back to school to get this degree, this master's, this certification. So as people think that through, because here, Robert, you know us, you've known us for years, like we hate debt. And we especially hate student loans.
Yep.
But so many people feel like the two are equated. If I go back to school, I must get a student loan to do so. So this is your wheelhouse because we're super transparent. Ty and I have never had a student loan ever because we paid our price up front. So you mentioned earlier, military. I went to the military first. Got all my degrees after the fact. Ty, she graduated in 4 years instead of 5 because she was paying her way as she went. She was working at the mall, and just paying as she went.
Yeah.
And so it took her a little longer. So we paid our price up front. And so the battle of student loan debt is not something that we personally endured. And I think we were a little before, when we went to college, student loan wasn't the primary pusher that it is. Like it's like I said, they've made it so that it's equated. Student loans are equated to going to college now. And so it became much more easier for people to acquire and rack up that student loan debt. And so now it becomes just a way of life. So people that are inching their way back to school, what is your advice as far as payment? Are there things out there that maybe people need to consider before they say, let me get this student loan?
Absolutely. Well, before even we go there, let's talk about going back to school. Or if you have a child or someone's on the approach, right? They're in high school and you're thinking about the future. I'm a big believer that you need to think about the ROI, return on investment of your education. Just like any other investment you might make in life, whether it's a 401k or buying a rental property, like the whole goal of going to college or getting an advanced degree or something is you're trying to spend some money on yourself to make more money in the future. That's the only reason you're going to college. If you want to get educated, there's so many ways to get educated. You can watch the best courses on YouTube right now. You can go and pay for, technical training from experts. Like if you want to be a coder, like you can go to like Code Academy or Khan Academy. There's all these ways to get educated. So let's be frank here and say like, you're not going to college because of education. You're going to college because you're trying to boost your future earnings somehow. through whatever career that looks like. So if we have that approach in mind, we need to work backwards here and decide where we're going and how to do it the most cost-effective way. Because, some careers do pay more than others. Sometimes you're just getting that degree to social signal to your boss that you can do it, right? Like, we're going to go back to school and get an MBA just because they'd promote me, right? Like, let's be frank, that's why you're doing it. You're not trying to learn a whole lot here, potentially. You're just trying to get that next promotion at work. And so with those costs in mind, like, what you're going to make. And if you don't know, you can Google it, right? Like glassdoor.com. Like the cool thing is we live in this information age where you can find pretty much any salary for any job at any company. And with that in mind, go to school in a way that's cost effective. And the hard part is there's a lot of psychology in this and how you feel, because we're saying everyone needs to go to college, and this is like a family thing, like, mom, dad, kids, or like, I need to better myself. I can't go to a community college. That would look bad. But you want to know something? It looks a lot better to go to community college for free in half the states, and then maybe transfer to your local state school, spend $10,000 for 2 more years at a state school, and graduate debt free, or maybe with a tiny bit of debt, right? But then you're financially set for life, versus going to a Harvard where you're still going online. Whether you're going to Harvard or you're going to your community college, you're taking that class from your living room and paying $40,000 a year, racking up debt, because chances are you don't have that money. I don't have that money. And then it takes you 160 or 100, whatever it is, $120,000 to get out. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So I would say, take what your future goal is in mind, and then we have to work backwards through how to get there in the most cost-effective way. Realize that the value of these degrees, they diminish quick. So your degree is like a social symbol for when you're first year after college. After that, no one cares where you went to school or what your degree was in. They care about what you bring, what value you bring to your employer. Once you're 28 or 30, no one will ever ask you again, other than maybe oh, where'd you go to school, just as icebreaker, but the value of it's nil. So really keep that in mind. But it's hard. It's easy for me to say this to you. It's harder for your family dynamic, the psychology, the mindset that we've created in this country of everyone needs to go to college. There's a lot of social pressure there. But I'm telling you, people will judge you if you go to community college, but they're also going to judge you when you're 30 and you're affording your first home and you're not stressed about money because you don't have the burden of student loans.
100%. You got to think about not just today, but 10 years from today,
They're judging you all along.
Yeah. So you might as well, since the judgment is coming, you might as well put yourself in the best position as possible. I know that a lot of adults seeking education, what has become popular even pre-pandemic, was online education, but it was a lot of these for-profit universities. Mm-hmm. Any advice on navigating that? Because essentially now everybody's an online university. So you don't necessarily have to be pigeonholed to only certain types of schools. So assessing the for-profit schools, the public schools, the private schools, help us in our psychology and our thought process as we're thinking about which direction to go if we want to do that.
Yeah, it all comes back to that ROI. So why are you going back to school? What's your goal? You're already working. Is it to get that master's, to get promoted? Well, I would challenge you, is your employer paying for it? Are they giving you $5,250 a year to reimburse you for your education? If not, maybe that's not the right employer to go back to school and do this for. So it always goes to ROI. I am not a fan of for-profit schools. They do serve a purpose. They used to serve a better purpose, and they've kind of corrupted themselves over the years. And there's definitely better ones than worse ones. I will throw another link to you. We put this in the bio or the show notes. collegescorecard.org is a really cool website. You can type in any college, for-profit, nonprofit, public, and it'll tell you a bunch of facts about it. Some of them are how much student loan debt does the average college graduate have? how many people are able to repay their student loan debt based on the jobs they got. And it's a hidden website. Like, it exists. You can find a college scorecard. But the Betsy DeVos Department of Education has not published this. They were required to put it out by law because they have all the details, but they don't want to highlight these details because some schools are fine, right? But there's some schools on there that get like D ratings, F ratings, because it's like their students are taking on all this debt and they're not able to repay the debt. So I would say when you're assessing your school, ROI first, and then go and research them, see what other graduates are getting out of the program. Like, I get it. Like, a national university MBA or University of Phoenix online MBA can be right for you in certain circumstances. Maybe your employer's paying for it and you need to take a night and weekend online MBA program to get that promotion to get to the next level at work. But like, if your employer's paying for it, cool. But if you're going to pay for it out of pocket, I don't know if the ROI is there. So like, you really have to assess how much you're spending on your education and then what you're going to get out of it. Because that's the real reason we have a student loan crisis today. It's not because so many people have student loans. It's because so many people have so much student loans and they're not earning enough to pay it. So the ROI for these people is negative. And so they feel like they were sold a false bill of goods, right? Like, you know, it's like the mortgage market. Like, when everyone's getting a house and taking out a mortgage, no one cares when they're able to afford the mortgage. It's when the house is upside down and the mortgage is more than the house is worth that people are like, oh my gosh, I was sold a false bill of goods. And it's the same with student loans.
So I was wondering, as you said it, you said, is your company paying for it? Is that something that a lot of companies do? And how does one find out if their company does have such a program?
So a lot of major companies do. Fortune 500 companies, I would say there is a strong possibility that your company offers some type of student loan repayment assistance or tuition reimbursement program. Got to check with your HR department and see. Even a lot of the federal government agencies and things are starting to offer these programs because they see the value there. You just have to dive in and know your details from your benefits package and see what's in there and read through line by line. Look for the words, like I said, tuition reimbursement or student loan repayment assistance. Tuition reimbursement, usually you have to pay the tuition and then they pay you back. Student loan repayment assistance is they'll help you with your student loans. Both of them can help you with your education. Sometimes like they'll just pay for it. I mean, I know some companies will send people to get their MBAs just on their career track. So like, if you feel like you need to go back to college to get promoted, then your company should pay you for it. Like, no way around that. If you're going to go take on that responsibility yourself and your company's not paying you, then you need to go find another company because they're probably not going to promote you even after you get it if they're not going to pay you for it.
And I'm wondering, for people going back to school, or let's take both avenues. For people who have kids going to school, can you talk about the world of scholarships and grants? Because I think if you Google, scholars, you're going to see a million different things. So are some sources of seeking out loans and grants better than others? And is there such a pool of scholarships or grants for adults going back to school, or is that just for people coming from high school and entering into college?
Now, there's scholarships and grants available for anyone. First off, a grant is government money coming to you. And the way you qualify for a grant is by filling out the FAFSA every year. So even if you don't think you qualify, I strongly recommend you fill out the FAFSA. The free application for federal student aid is what it stands for.
And I never knew that. Thank you, Robert.
Really?
I never knew what it stood for.
There you go. It's the free application for federal student aid. It's how you get student loans, but it's also how you qualify for things like a Pell Grant. And it's also how your school might open up funds to you, whether a scholarship or a grant. They look at that FAFSA, they see how much you have and whether you can qualify. That's how you get a grant. A scholarship is the most underrated way to pay for college. This is for high school kids. This is for adults going back to school. The problem is it takes work. These scholarship search engines and stuff, they might give you a few options, but there's thousands, millions of scholarship opportunities out there, but you have to find them. I strongly recommend that you systematize the way you approach scholarships by creating like 4 or 5 essays, creating all your bio, all that kind of stuff. and then spending a lot of time to find like 25 to 50 scholarships. And that takes a lot of time because they're not easy to find. But some places you can start, you can definitely start with the, scholarship search engines, but go to your school, go to your future employer or your current employer, go to any trade organizations in the fields you want to do, go to your church, go to any local nonprofits or local governments that you're a part of. You'd be surprised how many like local nonprofits and charities offer scholarships, or even churches, or, just community organizations and groups, small cities and governments. Oh my gosh, I see this all the time. They'll offer $1,000 scholarships. And here's the thing is that, a lot of these scholarships might not be huge amounts, pay for all of school, but if you can get $10,000 scholarships, that can go a long way to paying for maybe a year of state college. And that's something that you don't have to borrow. So it does take work to find all these, but if you systematize it, put it in a spreadsheet, create some basic essay outlines that you can tailor to each application, you can actually go through it pretty quick once you do the work.
And some people are thinking about the going to the top, going to get the doctorate. And I've heard the term fellow. I don't know what that means. Is that a program that helps you with the tuition? And are there things at the doctoral level, financial considerations or financial opportunities that people should consider?
Yeah. So in most cases, when you're going for being a doctor, you're going to be an educator for life. And so a lot of these are research based and whatnot. And what they do is that you're in a program and they'll give you a fellowship. And this is where the university basically covers your scholarship, maybe your housing, gives you a little salary, but you're also typically doing research in your field, writing papers, and maybe you're also teaching a class and being like, an assistant to one of the main professors. So fellowships are amazing, but they typically are for the master's or doctor's level programs, and they cover the cost, but you're also working for covering the cost, right? You're putting in the time, you're putting in the effort, you're creating something for the school or the program through research, things like that.
And is that only on because you said research, is that only on the PhD side, or is it on the EDD side, or, the other different types of doctorate level degrees that are out there?
It's typically only for, the PhD, the science degrees. It could be from some of the other degrees, but typically people that are staying in the education field, because you're going to become a professor or anything. I would be very careful if you're going to go for like a PhD in education or things, because typically those degrees have the worst ROI because they're social signaling to be a better teacher or a professor, and the salary doesn't necessarily justify the cost. So you have to be very careful. I'll tell you a scary stat. There's 100 people in the United States with $1 million in student loan debt, and all 100.
Wait.
Go back. Okay.
Say that one more time.
There's 100 Americans, and it could be higher now. This was stats as of last year. There's 100 Americans that have $1 million in student loan debt.
Whoa. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. That just caught me off guard right there. I didn't see that coming, Robert.
Okay, but here's part two of it. 100 of them, of the 100, it's all because of graduate school.
Oh.
So graduate school typically has the worst ROI for borrowing. And whether it's an MBA, a doctorate in education, legal, law, whatever it happens to be, it just has a bad ROI for most people that borrow, because in these career fields, the incremental earnings gain doesn't necessarily offset the cost. Like if you're going to be a high school teacher and you want to get educated, like getting that master's or getting that PhD, it might boost your salary $5,000, $10,000, and your peak salary might be 80 to 90. Like it doesn't necessarily offset the cost if you spend $100,000 getting some kind of advanced degree. And now I know it looks good because any kind of raise looks like it's a good thing, but if you're spending too much to get that raise, that's where you have the negative ROI.
All right. So as we close this thing out, Robert, I mean, you've been hooking us up with a lot of information. A lot of people, man, they're just despondent about their student loan situations. Like, man, how am I going to get out of this thing? Any words of encouragement as people endeavor during this pandemic and beyond, dealing with their student loan debt?
Yeah, I mean, get organized, know what you have, because we talked about a lot of programs and repayment plans. We talked about a whole bunch of stuff on this call, on this podcast. But if you're not organized, you don't know what you have, it's hard to make that decision about which way should I go. And then I encourage everyone to just make a plan for 1 year and 5 years and try to stick to it. The problem is that people waffle. They like create a plan. I'm going to go for, public service loan forgiveness. And then they do it for like 3 years and they're like, I'm not going to do it anymore. And I'm like, oh, but you're giving up so much free money. I know like you don't want to do it, but you got to make a plan and stick with it, because it's just, you'll be so much better off if you can just knock out some of the student loan debt. You can also look at things like earning more money, side hustles, things like that. I'm a big fan of those, because even an extra $100 a month, putting it towards your student loans, can snowball into big things much faster.
So tell everybody about your website and some tools and resources that you have to help them with all these things that you are encouraging them to do.
Definitely. So you can come to thecollegeinvestor.com. You can find our guide on every path to student loan forgiveness that you could ever find. You can also use our tool called loanbuddy.us. I have a little calculator. It's free to start. You can enter all your loan information, and we'll tell you the best repayment plan if you're having trouble figuring out what repayment plan that you should be on.
I didn't even know that, Robert. That sounds like a pretty cool tool you done built.
Yeah.
All right. What about social media? Where can people follow you?
Yeah, you can go and any social media platform, The College Investor, YouTube, The College Investor. If you like to listen, like you probably do because you're listening to this show, we have the College Investor audio show as well on podcast, whatever podcast platform you like.
Awesome. Hey, Robert, thank you again for coming and sharing all this great information. I know people took good notes, and if you didn't take good notes, hit the rewind button and do so, because Robert shared a bunch of good info. So thank you, sir, for coming back and helping us figure this stuff out.
Thanks for having me. This is great.